Dawn has a lot to say.
Why did you pick this as your life work, or did it pick you? Like, how has this encompassed your life and is absolutely part of your very fiber? Like, how did that happen, and how did it pick you?
Well, growing up in Stockton, in many ways, I didn't really understand the context of my life until I left and I went to UCLA and took Asian American Studies and Filipino American Studies classes. I'm third generation Filipina. My grandparents and parents worked in the fields. I'm the first generation to not work in the fields. But I didn't really understand how my grandparents, both sides, their immigration was part of a larger story of American empire in the Philippines, and that they had been a part of one of the greatest economic stories in the history of the world, which is California agriculture. I didn't realize any of that until I went to UCLA and took Filipino American Studies. And then when I got to those classes, though, I said, well, there's still a lot missing. Where's Stockton? Where's the story of my community, which was the largest community of Filipinos outside of the Philippines through most of the 20th century? What about community organizations? What about labor? And so I wrote Little Manila's in the Heart. That was my dissertation at Stanford. And I became involved with the Little Manila Foundation and with the Filipino American National Historical Society. So after I published the book and we have worked to try to preserve the Little Manila neighborhood, Larry Itliong kept popping up in all of my research. I had learned about Larry Itliong when I was at UCLA and at Stanford, and the critical role that he had played in the Delano grape strike, and I learned that my father actually knew him and that he had been president of the Filipino community in Stockton. In fact, he lived just a few miles away from where my grandparents lived, yet I knew nothing about him. It took me until I went to ethnic studies classes to learn about him, and that's a tragedy. Most Filipino American youth in Stockton today don't know who Larry Itliong is, and he's possibly one of the most pivotal figures in farm labor history, if not California and American labor history. So it became really my work to recover these stories of Filipino America. I've been so privileged to be able to go to Stanford and get my PhD there, and to become a professor at San Francisco State and work with thousands of students over the last 13 years I've been a professor. And in my lectures, bringing the story of Filipinos into the larger narrative of how I teach American history, but we need books to do that. I need to reach audiences that are beyond my classroom, and I especially want to reach young people who may never get to my classes and who may never be able to take ethnic studies or Filipino American studies, at the college level. It's hopeful that they do, but we need to get them interested and see themselves in American history at a very young age. I didn't see myself in American history until college. Maybe my life would have been different if I had. I think I would have really saw larger horizons for myself. But growing up as the child of farm workers and grandchild of farm workers in Stockton, all of their hard work and sacrifice was so that I could come to this moment and be able to choose whatever I wanted to do with my life. And what I want to do is to honor their sacrifice.
So she is the researcher behind Journey for Justice.
And she was one of my greatest friends, and she was funny like that. But she always talked about the ancestors, and she always talked about our grandparents and our parents, and always talked about the sacrifices that they gave in order for us to be here in the United States, and also for us to do what we wanted, for us to find what gives us joy, what makes us happy, what is funny, and what we want to do to create joy in other people's lives as we get older. And so, right around the time when Dawn, we were both in college, I have a mixed race family. How many of you might have different ethnicities in your family? Many of you? Right. So some are Filipino, Mexican. Who's Filipino and Mexican here? Ah, there you go. I have Filipino Mexican in my family. How about German? German? No German? Oh, there's German. I have German. African American? There you go. Latino. And different. And so that is all in my family. So when I was in college, I went and wrote this book called Beautiful Eyes. And it is a bilingual book, English and Tagalog. It says, ang aking mata ay maganda. I have beautiful eyes. Bulaga! Peekaboo! So he's playing with the baby. And so it's a very simple book, right? Ang aking ilong ay maganda. I have a beautiful nose. Here's this one. Ang aking tenga ay maganda. I have beautiful ears. And see, playing music right here. Kaliwa, kanan, left and right. So it goes on. I have a beautiful mouth. Ang aking bibig ay maganda. See that big teeth, big mouth? And so I had written this book because my family was a melting pot, and I knew that we needed to know some of our language, but we also needed to know how beautiful we were. I think sometimes, many times in my culture, in Filipino American culture, we need reminders, and I think every culture has this. Every community, sometimes, there's a lot of things that are happening, especially in social media, right? Hopefully you guys are not on social media or, you guys are on the internet, so you get to read and see other things. But you need reminders of how beautiful you are. And so, I wrote this to make sure that our community, the Filipino American community, will always know that they themselves were beautiful, and whoever was reading this to their child knew that they were beautiful, or a caregiver, or a teacher. Everyone knows that they too are beautiful, and we should love our noses. We should love our skin. We should love ourselves. And so I wrote this, and guess how long I shopped it around? Guess how long it took me for someone to say, I'm going to publish this book? Guess. Anyone want to guess? Hands up. Okay, well, let me say. 3 years. How many people think it's 3 years? 3 years? How about 5 years? 5 years? How about 8 years? How about 10 years? Okay, guess what? 10 years. Whoever raised their hand, 10 years. It took me 10 years to find somebody who would invest and say, hey, that's a great story. I think I'm going to publish it for you, and I'm going to pay for the printing. Took me 10 years. And so when you guys write your stories and you start shopping them around and you say, oh, I think I want to go to Hollywood. I got a great script, or I have a children's book. Sometimes it takes a while. And you just gotta hang in there. And so I hung in there. Me and my illustrator, who was a puppeteer, Ramona Bad, we hung in there. My parents, I always work everywhere with my parents, right? They translated. And I just love bringing my parents around. I just love them so much. And it was so nice to work with them. And it took us 10 years in a publishing house, a small publishing house took us on. And from that, I grew inspired, because it was a Pinay, it was a Filipino American woman who had her own publishing house, picked this book up and published me. And so when I talked to Dawn about creating a children's book about Larry Itliong, I was so inspired by this experience. And while it took me 10 years for it to get found a home and to get out into the public, it gave me so much inspiration that I thought, hey, that woman has her own publishing house. Why don't I have my own publishing house? And you know what? Dawn and I talked, and we said to ourselves, you know what? We are not going to wait 10 years for somebody to want to publish a book about Larry Itliong. I know what it's like. They might read it, and they might say, hey, listen, can you cut this out of your story? Or, hey, listen, you know what? That picture of Larry, can you do something to it, because I don't think it's going to sell. So we told ourselves we're not going to do that. We're going to tell it the way that history had wanted it told, which is with the truth and with the facts and the documentation that Dr. Dawn Mabalan found. and that she researched, and we're gonna do it. Our community, our Filipino American community, we're doing it all together. So we had so many people read the book. And also, we had a big dilemma. We had a big dilemma when you decide to do a project like this. What do you need? What do you guys think you need in order to, what do you guys think you need in order to do a book like this? Money! Oh my gosh! That is so right. I'm a mom. I have 4 kids. I was pregnant with twins. And I said, well, we don't have any money, Dawn, but we're gonna do this. And guess what? We created a campaign and asked from our community around the country to give and donate money. And in return, we would give them these beautiful eyes books. We would give them Dawn's book about Little Manila. And we would also give them Journey for Justice. So if you donated to us, we were gonna give you all the books that you needed for your children. 1, we're gonna tell you you're beautiful. 2, we're gonna give you your history. And 3, you learn about Stockton and Delano. So that is what we set out to do, and we were able to fund Journey for Justice, and now we are able to fund the 3 additional books that Dawn had wanted to write. And so, even if you don't have money, even if you're a kid, or even if you have to wait 10 years, it is possible. And right here, so when you guys think about, hey, I'm gonna be a musician, but I gotta get time in the studio, I gotta make those beats, you'll find a way, right?